No role plays, no conference calls, no BS. Chris and Lorenzo share 4 decades of combined experience to help you become a more effective leader. This is Hacking Your Leadership.
Welcome to Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lorenzo.
And Lorenzo, on this episode, I want to talk about an article that I saw in the Harvard Business Review, and we'll post a link to the article in the podcast description. It's called How to Make Leadership Positions More Enticing to Primary Care Physicians. And I know what you're thinking right now. What do you mean primary care physicians? Like this isn't necessarily normally what we talk about here on this show. But we've often maintained and we believe that leadership is leadership in terms of the skills needed to lead people, regardless of the industry that you're in. And there are a lot of tie-ins in terms of the expectations here compared to the expectations in roles that we would typically talk about on the show. I think about the first time that I was in a leadership role at all, and it was kind of like what you would consider to be like a key carrier, like a glorified key carrier, right? And the job itself consisted of things that would be largely kind of like babysitting or administrative, like making sure people are doing what they're supposed to do. And there were often times where in my mind I thought I have no real authority here, right? Like I have responsibilities and I have accountabilities that have to get done. But if something needs to change or needs to happen, I'm not the one who gets to like tell somebody. And that was really short-sighted because if I had looked at it the correct way when I was 19 years old, I would have said, well, no, this is a stepping stone and a way for me to demonstrate that I can have interactions with people that go the right way. I can have interactions with people where I'm trying to get them to change their behavior and therefore change, potentially over a long term, the culture of a place in a way that gets them to say, oh, I like what Chris has to say, and now I'm going to change my behavior, not because Chris has any authority over me, but because I trust Chris and I want to follow what he has to say, and I trust him to kind of like make good decisions on my behalf. And I think when it comes to these types of roles, there can be a lot of people who don't want these roles because they see it as just that. They would rather do the tactical things that they want to do as opposed to step into these leadership roles. And so I think this is a real problem, is getting people who are talented, quality people to want to step up into these roles that have a potential to positively change organizations. Do you see this where you are?
Well, yeah, and I think there's also an element of this where it's like I think the key holder role that you're talking about in retail, like there's this element of like, oh, now I have this responsibility. There's more trust. There's more like kind of like what I'm being asked to do. But it's also it's another level of responsibility. And so like if you're doing what you're doing and enjoying it, are you raising your hand to say, I'm going to continue doing this, but also I want more work, right? Like, and then as a leader, I now want to be held accountable, not just for what I do, but also for those that I lead. And so, people tend to really want and feel sometimes pulled towards leadership. I know I can do this. I know I can make change. I know that I have ideas that may be helpful, but then it becomes, okay, but do you also then want to take on all of the responsibilities that comes with leading people? And so again, I think that this is a good article and good for us to talk about because there are roles that you're going to take in your career that are going to be like kind of to your point, the roles that help you shape how to like influence without authority, if you look at it that way. But many times these roles are at a time in your career where you're not thinking about it that way.
Right.
You're just like, oh, you're going to pay me an extra 75 cents an hour and like I can unlock the doors? Cool, sign me up, right? And but you're like, I don't really have any authority here. So it's just I like that this article is like, again, about kind of a different industry than we normally talk about. But we talk a lot about leadership across all industries. Also, just real quick, shout out to Mike Shanat. He's in EMS, and he has some leadership development stuff that he does, and it's Shanat, Chanat. But he is constantly talking about this around leadership lessons that apply across industries and things that we can take and apply to the roles that we have or the industries that we're in. So I'm looking forward to kind of digging a little bit deeper into this and thinking about what are they talking about, and then how would that maybe apply to the worlds that we work in every day.
Right. I think the way I think about this is that even though the skills of doing a job, whatever that job is, like I'm talking about a non-leadership role job, the skills that it takes to do those jobs, part of the things that make somebody successful at those jobs or not are things like conscientiousness, the ability to think outside the box to solve problems, the ability to not just kind of like be focused in one direction and say go, and then you walk until you hit a wall until somebody turns you around, but to be able to look 3 or 4 steps ahead and make rational and conscious and intelligent decisions based on the context of things that might not be in part of your role or part of your purview, and those skills and abilities will lead you to do whatever that job is well, versus somebody who doesn't have those skills. A person who does those things well is more likely to be successful in a leadership role than someone who doesn't have those skills. But oftentimes people who have those skills, they don't necessarily want to do the role of leadership because they view it as a departure from the things they love doing. They love doing the actual job they're doing, and they think that stepping into a leadership role means I'm gonna lose the, I don't want to say the autonomy, but the kind of the ability to kind of like just put the bag of bricks down when I leave for the day. Like I don't want to be thinking about this 24 hours a day. I want to do my job, and I'll be conscientious about it. But being responsible for what other people do and how they do their job is just not enticing to me. And I think where that becomes short-sighted for leaders who are trying to kind of like get people to fill these roles is that when you have a culture is not something that is self-sustaining. You have to maintain it. Like effort has to go in to doing this. And if you have a shortage of people who do those things well in your leadership roles, then the culture will deteriorate wherever you are, and it will become a place that those good people no longer want to work at. So getting those people to kind of step up a little bit and take on more responsibilities is the role of a leader. The role of a leader is to figure out how to make these people want to take on some of these responsibilities in a way where they don't view it as a departure from what they love doing. They look at it as an addition to what they're doing, or as a positive thing they can pull positive things out of. It's a tough dance too, because sometimes it can look like you're trying to sell something to somebody, but you can't do that either, because it will come off as disingenuous. It has to be something real, but you have to be able to word it in the right way to make people actually want to opt in.
Yeah, I like that, and I like kind of, it breaks down a great example here in the article around like providing the on-ramp, which is really like, how are you positioning these types of roles that will resonate with the people that would be interested with them, but to your point, not lie about it. Like if I said, okay, hey, I'm going to make you a key holder. You're going to have keys and codes. You'll be able to unlock the door. You'll be able to alarm the building. And then you're going to go in early before everybody else is there, and then do all the administrative work that nobody else wants to do. And then you're also going to do that on the other 3 shifts at nighttime, right? You're going to do all the administrative
leadership?
work. Yeah,
that's leadership?
That's leadership, right?
Yes, okay, good.
Or are we going to say like, look, this is an opportunity to gain some experience through repetition of the security protocols, the things that we do, and take on the accountability around operational excellence and some cool terms that we throw out there. And then the real answer is, look, you're gonna get up early, you're gonna unalarm a building, you're gonna count cash, you're gonna do this type of work. These are things that you're gonna get better at over time, but this is not the best part of the gig. The best part of the gig is you're gonna have a lot of dedicated time working with the team to then be able to provide them an element of informal leadership and influence through the relationships that you build. And because you have some additional responsibilities, you're going to learn and grow through how do you navigate these relationships personally and professionally to learn from your team, but also to teach your team to become more efficient. So like there's a way in which you want to talk about this, and then also and it's different, I think, in retail because we get the time to position these things with the individuals many times, and they get to see it in others. I think in an industry like this where the job description is really important, and people are like applying based upon what they read, then what you have in writing has to be reflective of what what you want them to get out of the job, and how you want them to show up, and not make it just some like arbitrary, this is the same job that you get everywhere, that type of thing. So I think that's the challenge in some industries, but I think in retail we have a little bit more of an opportunity to kind of build in the context of why this would be good for somebody's career.
I think in a lot of industries and a lot of companies, they are short-sighted in terms of how they frame these roles. They frame it very very matter-of-factly, like these are the actual responsibilities of the role, and that's because these are the things that you're held accountable to. Meaning, if you don't take it and run with it from a standpoint of building relationships with people and demonstrating that you can lead without having an actual title and that you can kind of influence people to get better work done, you're not being held accountable in these roles to their performance. And so it's not going to be in the job description. But if you just do what's in the job description, then it is what it is. It'll become a self-fulfilling prophecy of you're doing exactly what you thought it was going to be. So there's an element of you having to take this as this is an audition. It's a springboard. It's a way for you to be, taken out of what you would do every day for a little bit of time or a lot of time to demonstrate how you are able to impact positively the rest of the business. Because if you're doing a role that is not one of these, if you're just doing an individual contributor role, chances are you don't have a ton of time to influence people and train people and coach people and help them get better at their jobs, because you're doing your job. You might have a little bit. These are the roles where you are given a lot of time to do that. And if you focus on, the counting of the money and unlocking of the building, then that's what it will be for you. And that's all it will be. And if you don't like doing the leadership aspects of it anyway, then maybe you'll fit right into this. But if you are looking at this from a standpoint of being able to impact culture and impact people and help people accomplish the goals they want to accomplish and move up within their career, if this is something that is appealing to you, you need to look at the roles as something broader than that, as a way to give you that platform to say, hey, you know what? A lot of this is blank slate stuff from a time standpoint. How you make the most of it is on you, and you are being tested in that same moment by people who are watching, going, let's see what Chris does with this. Let's see what Lorenzo does with this. We've given him a platform. Yes, he knows how to unlock a building, but anybody can do that. How does he influence people? How does he impact people? And if that is what's appealing to you, then it becomes significantly easier to let go of whatever you were doing in your day-to-day, and the monotony or the boringness of the administrative stuff becomes, I think, less boring and less monotonous.
Well, it's funny. Yeah, I think even in you were talking about kind of like the job description thing and talking about just what is the role, and is it a list of accountability things? And it's so funny because the other day somebody had sent me a job description they wanted me to read over, and that's exactly what it was. It was like 18 points, and it was just like, lead a team of approximately X amount of employees, be responsible and accountable for the profitability, blah, blah, like it was all these types of things. My initial thought was like, why can't we be radically honest about this? Like, what I would love to see is something that says, this job is hard and requires a lot of hours, right? Because we have big dreams, right? We know that we don't have the staffing that a larger competitor would, but what we do have is a commitment to do amazing things and the grit to go do them. If you have a life where you can only dedicate 40 hours per week, this job is not for you. But here's what you're going to get, right? We are competitive with our pay. We are looking to bring in people that want to help us like kind of define what we do. And we want those that want to be able to have an influence on the things that we offer and how we offer them. And so it's like almost like completely flipping it upside down and just being like, that's really what we want to say, right? But then we feel like we can't, or we feel like this job description has to be this or that. Like, and I'm like, but there's definitely a middle ground in there somewhere. And I think even in this article, I don't know anything about, the primary care physician. Yeah. I have nothing. Like I avoid the doctor, right? Like, right. But I had nothing here. But I know that if everybody else in this industry is doing it this way, and you come out and say, hey, we know that we're asking you to take on additional responsibility. We like basically in the article it talks about these are the 3 deterrents, right? Take those deterrents and put them up front and be like, we know what we're asking you to do.
Yeah. Don't gloss over them or pretend they don't exist. Because they're in the minds of every applicant or every person looking already.
You got it. We know that this is what you're thinking about this job, or we know that this is what you're kind of giving up for a move like this. So what we're going to say is like, you're giving up this, but this is what we really would like for you to help us do. Like, so like just being that, kind of like that clear, I think people read that and they go like, well, damn, if they're honest about this, I kind of like the vibe here. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like I'm going to walk into an honest culture with people who get it. They understand what's going on, and they're looking to do something different. And because it's different, I have a little bit more interest now versus everybody else who's approaching it every other single way. So I think it's something to kind of call out in general when you are not only like talking about roles from a leadership standpoint, but then also like having to put them in writing.
Right. And no one wants to do that because they want to put their best foot forward. So what they do is they glorify the things that are not glorifiable. Like they try to make things bigger than what they seem for the things that are kind of like the tactical, boring things, kind of put the lipstick on a pig, so to speak. And then in the same breath, they want to pretend there is no pig to begin with. So you right. Yeah. So they don't talk about the negatives of it at all or even acknowledge it. And they think that a person reading it will go, if we don't talk about this, they won't know that these are the hard things. Like, yeah, right. If they're in the industry already, they know what those things are, and that's the first thing they're thinking. So you're right. If you're the kind of person who's writing these job descriptions or you're talking to potential applicants and you acknowledge the things up front, all you're doing is showing that you are committed to transparency. And if you're committed to transparency when things are not fun to talk about, then you're going to be talking to applicants who will at least view the process differently. And I believe more open to the idea of thinking, all right, let's give this a shot because I'm not going to be lied to here. Like, we're going to be upfront about all this stuff. And if I have an issue or if I need help or assistance or if things aren't jiving with me on something, I can go to somebody clearly because they're going to be real with me and they're not going to say, well, this is what you signed up for. It's like, no, we're not duping people here. We want the right people in the role, people who aren't going to burn out and people who want to make positive change. The only way to do that is to make sure that you're upfront and honest with them as opposed to trying to trick people into applying.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to this episode's 1-minute hack. But first, a few words from our sponsors.
All right, for this episode's 1-minute hack, here's what I want you to do. First, click on this article in the podcast description and read it. There are 2 sections in here that are really important to talk about around designing and defining roles and then the support that those roles get once people are in the role. And the reason why these are important is because you may or may not have authority or responsibility over designing and defining what a role is from an actual, corporate or legal standpoint, whatever the printed definition or responsibilities are. If you do have control over that, then by all means, make sure that you're defining it honestly and clearly. If you don't have, kind of responsibility or the ability to make those changes, what you do have is the responsibility and the authority to figure out what tools and training and mentorship you give people who are potentially applying for the role once they're in the role, and how you frame it in a way that says, this is what I'm committed to doing for you if you want to take on the responsibility of this role. If you want to move up into one of these leadership roles, I'm committed to giving you these tools that are not listed in the job description. And I'm committed to giving you this training and this mentorship. And I'll be real and honest with you and transparent about what the potential pitfalls are here. I'll be honest with you about what I saw when I was in the role and the mistakes that I made and how you can avoid making the exact same mistakes. These are all things that can make these roles more enticing to people because they can they feel like they have allies that will allow them to do a lot of what they love doing, as opposed to, kind of just looking at it as these roles that take them out of what they love doing. Do this the right way, and you'll have people who are applying for more roles on their own because they see what kind of a support you are to people who are currently in the roles.
Yeah, I think it's a great 1-minute hack, and continuing to consider how we think about roles, how we communicate these roles, how we support these roles, I think is really important, especially this day and age where we're continuing to see, this kind of movement towards kind of transparency, radical honesty, whatever you want to call it, in everything that we're doing. And I think that we have to meet that that movement in a way that shows and shares that we are very understanding of exactly what people are considering, thinking about, feeling about movements in their career and next jobs, next roles, those types of things. Like I think sometimes we just we have this projection that everybody wants to move forward, and that, you know, because maybe we didn't get to ask a bunch of questions, or because it was just kind of like, well, if you want that job, like you just got to deal with the things that you like and then deal with the things that you don't like and whatever, that we have to maintain that same kind of approach when it comes to the roles now and in the generation now that's working. And I think that they're asking for something different. They're asking for something more, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think that being upfront and saying like, yeah, this is exactly what the job is, and these are the things about the job that you know, are you know, maybe monotonous. These are the things about the job that we just have to do. But you said this earlier in the show, and I liked it. It's kind of like when we say things like, well, like you kind of like, this is what you signed up for, but in fact, that's not what they signed up for. Like
Right.
we have to get better at that. We have to get better on closing that delta and being upfront with the things of the job that are just a part of the job that we all have to do that sometimes we don't enjoy. But then spend the time talking about what you're getting out of this over time and how it's shaping, you know, the work that you want to do to get the future that you want to have.
Right. And the last thing I want to say about this, I think it's really important too, is that, you know, you don't get to be in a culture that is good, that you enjoy coming to work, you know, at every day. You get to do your job, and this is something that allows you the work-life balance, all the positive things that you see about your current role. This isn't something you're just given without any responsibility. If you like the way that culture is, you should feel a responsibility to kind of help maintain that culture, to kind of put something into the culture. And this is where those things happen. If nobody talented and committed and, you know, good at these skills ever stepped up, then companies would be very short-lived. You'd start out with great culture and it would decline very quickly because no one wanted to move into these roles. So I don't think there's anything wrong with saying to somebody, hey, you know what, you get a lot out of this organization and out of this role, and you clearly enjoy it here. There are other people who would benefit from this culture being maintained, including yourself, meaning you will continue to want to come to work here if the culture is maintained and if the leadership is maintained and if it remains an enjoyable place to come. You can and you should feel a responsibility to help maintain that, as opposed to just, you know, letting it benefit you. You know, pay it forward a little bit and see what it does for you at the same time.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to the end of this episode. This is Hacking Leadership. I'm Lorenzo.
And I'm Chris.
And we'll talk to you all next time.